Sounds good.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tom Hall, the principal of Brighton High School, and Danielle Edmonds and Danielle's the middle school principal, asked through our PTSA. We have two guest speakers with us for our PTSA meeting with the principals today. Deborah Ortiz Pardee from National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and Stephanie Schwebke from Bavona Child Advocacy Center to share a variety of things and items, anything from digital footprints, internet safety, online predators, red flag warnings, and social media concerns. And I'm going to, we're recording so we can share. And I'm going to turn over to Deb. And I know maybe throughout the presentation, or at least at the end, there will be time for questions. And we're going to send this link out to our parents who couldn't attend today. So thank you for hopping on if it's your lunchtime. Appreciate it. And I'm going to turn over to Deb.
Thank you so much, Tom. I really appreciate you. Thank you for inviting me and Stephanie to be able to have this time with all of you to talk about keeping our kids safer on the internet. And this presentation comes from our NetSmarts workshop, which is a program of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And if you're not familiar with NCMEC, we are a national organization, a clearinghouse for law enforcement who work cases of missing and exploited children, but we're also here to support the families as well who are going through that sort of crisis. And our mission is threefold. We aim to help find missing children, reduce child sexual exploitation, and to prevent future victimization. So NetSmarts was developed to give families and schools and community groups tools to be able to teach children ages 5 through 17 about how to make better choices online, better and safer choices online, and also to become more responsible digital citizens. There's lots of great information on our website to guide parents in protecting their children online, a variety of free resources, including games and videos and classroom lessons and even presentations like this one that are available to community groups. So you can find all of these resources on our website at missingkids.org /NetSmarts, and I'll have future slides that'll have that information on it. So stay tuned for that. If you see a website listed on a slide or a QR code or anything like that, feel free to screenshot or take a picture of a resource that you might want to hang on to and check out. But I certainly recommend that you all check out our NetSmarts resources because they're free, they're informational, and it really will help to support you in those conversations with your kids around these issues. So, one of the big focuses around NetSmarts is to really help you to establish an open relationship with your child. So again, these resources will help to jumpstart those conversations and give you some of the words that you might be struggling to find to have these conversations with your kids. So one of these things this presentation is not going to cover, we're not going to be going through every single app that could be possibly available to your kids and teens. But it is really important for you as parents to get to know what your kids are using when they're going online. So getting familiar with their social media apps, their games, websites that they like to visit, and that'll help you to have those open conversations with your kids when you know what apps they're using. And then I encourage you to get to know the different features of the apps and games that your kids are using, such as reporting features, blocking, privacy settings, that sort of thing. So the best way that we can protect our kids is to have those meaningful, open, and continuous conversations with them that help them to develop critical thinking, knowing how to say no if someone is making them feel uncomfortable. So those rejection, refusal skills, social, emotional, and behavioral skills, helping them develop these skills will help them to make better choices, help them with problem solving abilities, and help them with developing healthy relationships. So one of the things that we need to think about in terms of online is that we tend to separate it out. You might have heard people say like online in the real world, but the reality is the internet is a very real space where our kids are navigating, they're making connections, they're developing friendships that are very meaningful to them. So when we think about their online and offline lives, we have to remember that the two coexist and overlap, and we need to be mindful of that. And also remembering that kids can access technology throughout their day. So even if you have minimal technology at home, they could have access at school, at the library, at a friend's house, a relative's house. They might be accessing through handheld devices such as phones or gaming systems, um, or their gaming systems at home, like their Xboxes and PlayStations and whatnot. So just being aware of all the different ways and the different places that your kids have access to technology. And when you talk about best practices with their online life, um, have weaving in those conversations that these best practices apply no matter where or how they're getting online. Um, so the reality is kids do want to hear from us as parents. They do want to hear about these issues from their parents and from their educators. Oftentimes, we're the ones that are shying away as adults from these conversations. Maybe we don't know um, all the issues. Maybe we don't know how to broach a topic, especially when things are become sensitive. So when we do shy away from these conversations with their kids, we're basically leaving them to figure it out on their own. And they shouldn't have to do that, right? So by talking to them, we can provide accurate information. We can share our values and our beliefs, learn about theirs. Again, it should be a two-way conversation, not just us preaching to our kids, but listening to what they have to say, listening to their points of view, and also, acknowledging even with your child that it's tough for me to have some of these conversations with you because I care about you. I love you. I want you to be safe. And some of these things are pretty scary. So let's talk about them so that you can be as safe as possible online. So I'm going to share with you a video which comes from the No Filter campaign from Thorn. And in this video, a teen talks about how important it is to have his mom talk to him about these issues.
From a child's perspective, growing up with somebody like yourself, for parents, it's a huge thing to have the ability to just listen and have an open dialogue, because at the end of the day, children don't have anybody to ask about how life works. They're just thrown into this crazy world and they have no idea how to interact with it and interpret it. And they need somebody like a parent, whether it's their parent or somebody else's, to help them learn that and understand that. And if you're not providing that to your kid, they're gonna have some problems online, right? It's just the name of the game.
Okay. So the good news is that most kids are not getting into trouble online, but there's still risks that we need to be aware of and consider when we're talking with them. Um, so the issues that we're talking today are not specific to just one device or one website. Oftentimes the question that we get from parents is, what are the safe apps? What are the places that my kids should avoid? And the reality is we get reports at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children on our cyber tip line, and I'll be talking more about what the cyber tip line is, but in short, it's a reporting mechanism where folks can report online exploitation. And we get reports from across all platforms. So it's not that necessarily which sites are safe or unsafe. It's about looking at what are some of the risks that are out there, what are the behaviors that are being displayed when engaging in some of these apps that are out there that we need to look out for. Um, but no matter what your kids are doing online, whether they are playing games, social media, looking things up, watching videos, there's always risks out there for any tech user, right? For us and for our kids, including exposure to inappropriate content, privacy issues, exploitation that can come in the form of online enticement, which could look like sextortion, which is a form of online enticement. We'll break down what all that means. Sexting is probably an issue you're familiar with, the peer-to-peer sharing of inappropriate images and how that can blow up when that happens. And of course, cyberbullying. So we're going to take a look at these risks, and we're going to take a look at some strategies and important points to make sure that we're covering all the bases when we're talking to our kids about these issues. It is important to talk about the risks at every age. So I know today we're focusing on middle school, high school kids, but if you do have kids in the elementary level, um, it's really important for us to be talking to our children as soon as we're putting devices into their hands, right? And that's very young. Think about your toddlers who have access to videos. How many times do we see parents handing a tablet or their phone over to their kids to watch a video, and then before you know it, they might be onto something that they didn't expect and that you didn't expect. So we need to start having those very basic conversations when kids are young about good manners online. We call that netiquette, about what to do if you end up seeing something that makes you feel uncomfortable on the internet, any pop-ups that might come up, and helping kids to understand that not everybody online is trustworthy, and opening up the doors to conversations with them about who are trusted adults in their life, who are their support systems, where can they go to if they do have an issue. But as kids get older into upper elementary, middle school, and high school, we need to expand those conversations to include more detail about cyberbullying and sexting and enticement and grooming and the risk factors and signs. So we're going to build on those. And that's a nice thing about NetSmarts is we have content and information for all the different age levels that will grow with your child. So today's presentation, we're kind of focusing on teens, but I do want to let you know that we do have a lot of great resources. If you do have children at home that are elementary or other kids in your family that are at the elementary level, we have a whole animated series called Into the Cloud. It's a video series with 2 seasons. Each season contains 6 videos that are about 5 to 6 minutes long, following the NetSmarts kids characters. If you're familiar with NetSmarts traditionally, you might remember Nettie and Webster, the brother and sister team who live in the NetSmarts neighborhood, who aim to help keep kids safer online. And they go on a whole adventure, and the videos really help to introduce and reinforce some basic rules of safety, and then it builds upon it going forward. So I really encourage you to check out this video series. There are also activities online and offline on the website for these younger kids. There's facilitator guides, lots of great content and games aimed at this age group. So I encourage you to check that out. So as I mentioned, we want to start these conversations very young, so that we can build those foundations with our kids, and so that we can look for daily teachable moments, use specific examples to start having those conversations. So, it might start out with talking to our children about uncomfortable interactions online and what that might look like. So a specific example of a conversation starter around that might be, have you ever received a comment or a post or picture or video that from someone that made you feel uncomfortable? What did you do? Depending on the response, ask them, what did you do about the situation? Did you comment on the post? Why do you think it made you feel uncomfortable? So, and then you can help to guide and manage that situation to prevent it from happening again. But the idea is to help building those critical thinking skills as well. And we want to continue those conversations into teenhood. So let's talk about and break down some of the risky situations that can happen while using technology. There's a lot of content on the internet that can be very educational and helpful and entertaining. But as adults, we know that there is a lot of content online that's not appropriate, that's illegal, that's violent, that's hateful, even stuff out there that would be upsetting if we encountered it as adults. So helping our kids to navigate what to do if they come across something that was inappropriate and how to manage that. Okay, so one of the key things that we can do if our children do encounter something or someone online that makes them feel scared, uncomfortable, or confused is to remember, what is to reflect on and think about our role as a trusted adult. Of course, a trusted adult is somebody who is going to listen without judgment or with shame. It's going to be active listening. So we want to hear our child's point of view about what's going on. If they come to us with an issue, of course, we want to make sure that we do something about it. So if they bring us this information about something that had happened, taking action, and that could be in the form of, depending on the situation, just being there and listening to our kids can be very comforting and helpful. But if it's something where more action needs to be taken, so maybe they came across an inappropriate post and they need help reporting it or blocking it on the site, if it's something that rises to a greater level, such as if somebody sends them pornographic images or is asking for inappropriate content, reporting that to the cyber tip line can be very helpful as well. So taking some sort of action, if there's cyberbullying situations happening, it might be, okay, maybe we need to go talk to the school if it's spilling over into the school community as well. So that can be helped to be mitigated on that side of things. It's important for us to remain calm. And if our kid is having issues, problems, hurting because they see something that made them feel uncomfortable, somebody's making an inappropriate request, our emotions can kind of go through the roof because our children our children are they're the most important people in our life, and we don't want anything bad to happen to them. But it is important that we do our best to stay calm for our kids, and to assess the situation, um, and um, and so be able to usher the situation forward in a calm way. If we're freaking out about stuff, our kids are going to freak out too. Um, so also, as a trusted adult, we can talk to our kids about their boundaries and what is crossing a boundary when online, and the importance that they can refuse any kind of interaction on the internet that makes them feel uncomfortable, that crosses a boundary. So we should be talking about boundaries in terms, just like we do for personal safety, in terms of online life as well. Sometimes we're not always going to be the one that a child goes to for help, or maybe they're at school or at a friend's house when something happens, or at an after-school program. Um, so kind of helping them to identify who are the other adults in their life that can support them if they encounter an issue, whether it's offline or online. So identifying who are their support systems, who are their trusted adults or safe adults in their life, their go-to adults if there is an issue. And that could be different for every child, right? It's because it's going to be who resonates with them, who they feel comfortable. So helping them to identify, do they have a favorite teacher at school, a coach, a mentor? Is there another relative in the family that has a good relationship with your child that could be a trusted adult for them? So just helping them to know that they're not alone, that they have a circle of adults around them that can support them if they encounter any issues. Okay, so seeing inappropriate content online could have negative effects on individuals, even us as adults. I mean, I'm sure if I said, raise your hand if you've seen something online that you wish you could unsee, I'm sure all of our hands would go up. So it can have a very negative effect on us, even as adults, when we see things online. So it's really important that, we recognize that with our kids as well, that they could be having a really hard time with some things that they see. They might have questions. So again, it's important for us to listen attentively and to stay calm, ask open-ended questions if they do encounter something, and then take that action, help them to report if it's something that's reportable to the site or to the app or to the game or to the cyber tip line. Some things, so sometimes you're not going to be there when something happens. And so we want to make sure that our kids know steps that they can take in the moment, so that they know exactly what to do if they encounter something that they didn't want to see. And that can include turning off the screen, if they're on a browser, using a back button to back out of it. Again, who are their trusted adults that they can go to for immediate support? And again, those reporting and blocking options on the apps and games that they're using. And of course, reporting it to the cyber tip line is an option. So again, the cyber tip line is a centralized reporting mechanism where folks can report online enticement, inappropriate content, misleading domain names. So a web address that seems kid or teen friendly, and ends up being something that's inappropriate and unexpected, that can be reported to the cyber tip line. Child sex trafficking, by the way, can be reported there as well. Online enticement, including sextortion, child sexual abuse materials can be reported to the cyber tip line. We don't call it child pornography anymore. We know that the term pornography often implies consent. And what we do know is that legally, children under the age of 17 cannot legally consent to sex, and that includes picture taking. So, so we call it what it is. These images of children that are um, traditionally called pornographic, it's child abuse is what it is. It's child sexual abuse imagery. So that's what we call it, and we call it CSAM for short. But those are the types of things that can also be reported to the cyber tip line. So, when you think about these tools that I'm sharing with you today, our NetSmarts resources, the cyber tip line, adding these to kind of your child safety toolbox, is the purpose here today. We want to make sure that we're filling your cup with this knowledge and these reporting options, so that if we can hopefully prevent some situations from happening altogether, but if something does happen, you know exactly what you have to do to help support your child in handling it. So all social media sites and apps are a little different when it comes to their settings. So it's really important, again, I mentioned get to know the apps and games that your kids are using so that you can get familiar with their privacy settings, their blocking settings, and their reporting settings. So it's going to look a little bit different for each, but they're all pretty similar. There's These features are used on most apps and games that are out there. So just get familiar with that and utilize them if you end up coming across a post, or an image or video that your child didn't want to see, or that's against terms of the site, or that makes them feel uncomfortable, or something that might be illegal. Okay. So not only do our young people have access to all sorts of content online, but they also have the ability to share through their social media accounts and with others, through text messaging and direct messaging within apps. So, of course, we need to talk to our kids about how they engage online and what do their online behaviors look like, and giving them some best practices um, about what is okay and not okay in terms of what they are posting online. So, um, talking about not only kind of giving those guidelines, but also talking about what are the risks with posting anything inappropriate, anything that could be illegal or offensive or threatening or violent, um, against rules or codes of conduct, or anything that could be hateful. What could happen if they post this way online? Of course, it can affect their reputations. They can get in trouble, depending on the activity. If it's something that's against code of conduct or school rules, there could be consequences there. If they're breaking a law, there could be consequence there. It could hurt their chances of getting into college or scholarships or a future job. Keeping in mind that teens aren't always looking that far future forward. So making sure to find, when you're having these conversations, what's important to your kids? Is it their reputation? Is it something circulating that could be embarrassing that would that they'd be most concerned about as well? So, tailor your conversations to what is important to your kids and what are their concerns when it comes to posting online. Um, look at what if situations. How would they handle a situation if an embarrassing photo ended up going online? What are the consequences of that happening? How could it affect you? How could it affect others? Um, so again, looking for specific examples and teachable moments to be able to have those conversations. We also want to make sure that we're talking about privacy. So, what's okay, not okay to share about themselves or their family or their friends. So, kind of having those best practices conversations around privacy, such as, is it okay to post family and friends photos? It might be okay as long as there's permission and using privacy settings and all of that. Um, Casual conversations in a game might be okay. They happen all the time in interactive gaming. But if those conversations become too personal or make them feel uncomfortable, we want our kids to know that they don't have to engage in the conversation. Just because they were asked a question doesn't mean that they have to answer it. And it's okay to back out of a game if someone is getting too personal or saying anything that could be inappropriate. So having these conversations about these best practices, making sure that they're not sharing their geolocation when posting pictures or videos or live streaming, um, making sure that there's not anything that could reveal personal information in the photos, such as where they go to school or the street that they live on. Um, they shouldn't be sharing information about their family or close friends, like parents' work, where their siblings go to school, details about extracurricular activities with people that they talk with online. Having conversations about passwords. Obviously, we don't want them sharing their passwords with anybody. But making sure that they know, like even with your game, you want your friend to jump onto your game to level you up on a game, don't share your password. Log in for them. And if you want them to help with that, don't share the passwords. Our kids could be best friends with somebody on Monday, and by Friday they're no longer friends, right? They could be really fickle. So we don't want them sharing their passwords, even with their friends. They should have a different password for every account. Make them strong passwords and change them often. So think about like all the safety protocols we have in our workplaces around passwords and cybersecurity. We want to pass kind of some of those best practices on to our teens as well. So again, we want to keep the personal information private. These are examples of information that we do want to keep private. And the reason why we want to make privacy a top concern is that these things can happen. Kids can be targeted for identity theft and online scams. Hacking is something that happens all the time. So if they're sharing their passwords and other account details, it can put them at risk for that. Online enticement is something that can be a risk factor as well. If they're sharing all this stuff about their life online, now this is giving a potential predatory offender, a bad actor online, information about their life to make connections with them, to be able to connect with other people in their life. And so that's where that information can be used for grooming in online enticement situations, and that includes with sextortion. Sextortion is a newer online exploitation crime directed at children that uses tactics such as blackmail in order to acquire sexual content from a child, or to meet up with them in person, or to obtain money from a child. And we'll talk more about sextortion in a little bit, but this is an issue that we've seen morphing over the last year. It's been kind of shifting from the motivation of the offender wanting to gain content to wanting to gain some sort of money or something of value. So we'll talk more about that. Okay, so we want to be mindful of some of the consequences or some of the risks that we should say if too much information is shared online and why this is so important. So, establishing rules and guidelines about what's okay, what's not okay to share. Again, learning up on the reporting options if, say, somebody did hack into their account, knowing how to report it to the site, keeping privacy settings up to date. And privacy settings can change when there's system updates to different apps and games. So you always want to make sure that you and your kids are checking privacy settings to make sure that they're the most up-to-date level, because it doesn't happen automatically. You have to sometimes go in and enable certain features manually. Again, strong passwords, talk about who they're talking with online, just like you know who their friends are at school, in the neighborhood, in sports and clubs that they engage in. Knowing who they're playing games with online, who they're engaging with on social media. We need to have that same level of understanding with our kids when they're engaging online. And creating a safety plan as well. If something does happen, talking about like what can we do to avoid a situation if something did happen. Um, expectations of how to behave, what and when children need to ask for permission. So with your younger kids, they might need to ask permission for just to download something, right? With your older kids, it might be, they have a new online friend that they're playing games with and they want to meet up in person. So, getting your permission for something like that, and what does that look like for your family? Um, Safe words for your child to communicate if they need your help when in public. You're in a public place, but they're on their phone looking at something and something happened and they need to tell you, but they don't want to say it in front of everybody else who's around them. Having a way for them to alert you if something is bothering them or if something happens. And then you can react from there. Monitoring your kids' activities without making them feel like you're violating their privacy as well. So these are all things that you can do to create that safety plan. So let's talk about what does that online enticement mean. So again, this is something that can be reported to the cyber tip line. And it involves an individual who's communicating with someone believed to be a child through technology, and their goal is to commit some sort of sexual offense or an abduction. And that can include sextortion. So again, sextortion is when a child is being groomed to take sexually explicit images or ultimately meet face to face, or to engage in a sexual conversation. Sometimes they might do this in order to sell or trade the child's imagery. So this can take place across any platform, online enticement and sextortion. But it often happens on social media, messaging apps, gaming platforms. And, since 2022, we have seen a rise in cases of sextortion targeting boys ages 12 to 17 primarily, um, where they're asking for money. So we call this financial sextortion. Um, and they might try to acquire an image from the child, and then they say, okay, I have this image of you. I'm going to post it to the public, or I'm going to post it to all your friends and send it to your family. And I know how to do this because we've been connected and I can see your friends and family on your social media, unless you send me money, Venmo, PayPal, Cash App. If kids don't have that kind of resource, they might say, go down to the corner store and buy a gift card and scratch off the code on the back and send it to me. Oftentimes, these requests are coming from overseas. And again, we're seeing this being targeted towards boys more than girls, but we should be talking to all of our kids about this form of online enticement. So in terms of online enticements, um, again, these situations typically occur on social networking sites, but they can also happen on gaming sites where there's chatting features, usually among older teens, but we are seeing that kids as young as 9-year-old 9 years old are getting inappropriate solicitations as well, and are engaging and sharing their own self-generated content. We want to stay away from using the term stranger danger for online safety, just like we stay away from using stranger danger with personal safety, because number one, the perception from kids when they're engaging with people online, they don't feel often like strangers. And also what we know about child sexual abuse imagery that's been reported to the National Center is that oftentimes in these series, that these known series of child sexual abuse imagery that we know about, 66% of the time, the offender is somebody that the child knows, a family member, a friend of the family, a person of authority in their life that's using technology to obtain that imagery. So we need to make sure that we're not just talking about be careful with people that you don't know online. We want them to pay attention to inappropriate behaviors of anybody that could be in their life that might be using technology in an inappropriate way in order to exploit our children. We also want to talk about healthy relationships and red flags in healthy relationships. What does a healthy friendship look like? What does a healthy online friendship look like when your kids begin discovering the dating realm? What does a healthy dating relationship look like? And use real and specific situations when we're talking to our kids about it. Again, helping them to develop refusal and rejection skills to say no to anything that makes them feel uncomfortable, and helping them to identify those trusted adults. So grooming can happen in different ways. Sometimes it can take a lot of time, and an offender will take their time trying to build a relationship with the child in order to groom them. So they might sound really nice and friendly and like a good friend and very caring at first before anything inappropriate starts happening, and they're doing that purposefully to gain trust so that once they have that trust, they can manipulate from there and distort the relationship. Sometimes the grooming can happen really fast. It could start right after they meet, so that they can obtain explicit content from a child within minutes or hours. So, there's not like one size all kind of situations when it comes to the grooming by offenders. Um, Sexual exploitation and abuse do not always have to involve grooming as well. Sometimes it just starts right away. Um, so just knowing that sometimes they're offering things like cell phones or gift cards or other gifts, other technology to gain trust, and also if kids are lacking technology, to give opportunity to be able to connect. Wanting to keep a friendship a secret is also something that they might do. So these are some of the grooming tactics that somebody who might be trying to take advantage of a child online might be engaging in. And so these are some of the behaviors that we can help our kids and teens be aware of, to look out for as they are engaging in online friendships and gaming and interacting on social media threads. Someone who is overly flattering, if they want to send them things, first of all, if they're wanting to send something, they should be taking a step back, because now they have to give out their address, which is giving out personal information. So that should be a red flag right there. They might be talking about inappropriate topics such as adult subjects or sex or dating, asking to keep secrets, um, trying to turn them against family and friends. Oh, your parents don't get you like I do. Think about the arguments we have with our kids sometimes, and somebody might take advantage of that. Oh, your parents don't understand you like I do. I would never treat you that way, right? Um, if they're asking for any kind of content, if they are wanting to send inappropriate content to the child, if they start using blackmail as a way to leverage getting content or getting anything else like money or gift cards, if they're making them feel guilty when they're not online or spending time online with them enough, or making them feel ashamed. or if they want to meet face to face. These are all things that we want kids to know about, that, if you see some of these behaviors with people that you're communicating with online, or if you see this in your friends, in their relationships as well, this is time to stop talking to this person and to tell a trusted adult. So these are some signs of grooming that you can look for as a parent if you notice that your child's receiving packages in the mail from unknown places. Excuse me, if they're calling unknown numbers that you don't recognize when you look at your cell phone bill. If they're minimizing the screen whenever you're coming over, it could be meaning that they're up to something that they don't want you to see. So it's kind of time to be kind of like that parent over the shoulder and to ask questions. If they're starting to shy away from family, from friends, from activities that they normally would enjoy, that could be a sign that something has changed in their life, something has happened. If they're getting upset when they can't go online because the offender is making them feel guilty if they're not spending enough time online with them, they're being demanding. So different things that you can do to talk to your kids about online enticement and predatory offenders is, of course, talking about those healthy relationships, as we talked about before, what makes a healthy relationship, um, and have an open door policy about talking about relationships so that they feel comfortable coming to us about these things as opposed to maybe seeking out answers about these things online. And if we're not talking to our kids about healthy relationships, other people online would be happy to have those conversations for us. And those are not the conversations we want our kids to be a part of. Remembering that our kids, they might be flattered by attention from older teens or from young adults or even older adults. So making clear with our kids that a 22-year-old flirting with a teenager is not flattering, it's inappropriate. This is not a part of appropriate behavior in online friendships or in-person friendships. Um, you might consider setting a code of conduct in your household and include rules about meeting offline for older kids. If you're not comfortable with it, then tell them why they're not allowed to meet friends from the internet in person, and coming to an agreement together with your child about those types of interactions. If you think it's okay, then establishing rules to make it safer. So that can include, you know, maybe finding out who they are, talking to the friend's parents, meeting up together, um, getting your permission before a meeting, meet in a public space. So putting together those guidelines together with your child if you think it's okay for them to meet up with a new online friend that's their own age. Again, knowing your kids' online friends, as we talked about before, but if you feel like your kids are engaged in an online friendship that you feel is crossing a line, it's crossing boundaries, could be illegal, you can always report it to the police. You can report it to the cyber tip line as well. And I really encourage you to report it to both the police locally and the cyber tip line, so that you can cover all your bases in a situation. We can also share out the cyber tip line with our teens. Teens are capable. This is an example of a conversation that occurred on a social media site between a 15-year-old who ended up having to report it. So basically, an offender was asking to trade images, and the teen refused with a little bit of humor. So they didn't fall for this offender's tactic. But it's a good thing that they reported it. We really want to encourage teens, even if they're not bothered by something, we still want them to report it, because chances are that offender is not just talking to that teenager, they're talking to other kids and other kids who might be more vulnerable than this one. So we definitely want to encourage reporting behaviors with our kids, even if they're not bothered by something that happens, so that we can make the internet a safer place for all children. I talked about the cyber tip line quite a bit already. Again, this is where you can report online exploitation, including if somebody were to send your child a photo, ask for obscene content, if they speak to your child in a sexual manner, if they want to meet up in person, all of these things can be reported to the cyber tip line either by going to the cybertipline.org and filling out the report form, or you can call our national hotline, 1-800-THE-LOST. And that is also the phone number that can be called if a child has gone missing, regardless of how they have gone missing. So if you do experience a missing child situation, the first thing that you should do is call local law enforcement, call 911 first. But we hope that your second phone call will also be to NCMEC at our 1-800-THE-LOST hotline, because then we can mobilize to help support the family in their search for their missing child. We can also bring a lot of investigative resources for the law enforcement agency who is investigating the case as well. We can create posters. We have the whole family advocacy team that can help to support the family in their search, and also if their child is exploited. So if you have to make a cyber tip line report, our family advocacy team can help with that too. And I'll tell you more about them in a moment. So in terms of picture sharing, sexting is a trend that we've been seeing for many years with our young people in the middle school, high school level, where they're sending nude or partially nude images of themselves to each other. Research tells us that just over 19% of teens have sent an image of themselves out, and nearly 35% of teens say that they have received an image of another child that was sent to them. And about 14% of teens who had received an image have also reshared it. So when we're talking to our kids about sexting, it's really important that we don't just focus on the sender, the person who is depicted in the image. We also need to make sure that we're talking to our kids about, we shouldn't be asking anybody for these images as well. So the requester, and if they receive the image, knowing what to do if they do receive an image of another person, and the importance of not resharing. So we have to go beyond to just don't send or just don't do it, and also make sure that we're talking to our kids to prevent them from requesting it and resharing it too, because there's choices made all across the board there. And we want to be able to help them to make the better choices to minimize these situations when they do happen. Kids are sexting for a variety of reasons. Oftentimes it's in a context of like a dating relationship. I'm sending it for one person's eyes only. Of course, with technology, there's no such thing as for your eyes only, because it can be lost or misplaced so easily, shared without permission, seen by a wide audience. So regardless of what the reasons is, the consequences certainly outweigh. So we have a video called Your Photo Fate, and due to time, I'm just going to show you a clip of this, but I hope that you will visit NetSmarts and watch the full video. And this really focuses on that full picture of when something like this happens.
You probably get lots of messages every day, but what if you got one like this? What would you do? Would you send a picture? No? Cool. That's an easy way to protect yourself. But what if you'd chosen differently? What if you send the picture? They'd never share it with anyone else, right? Do you want the picture shared with others? Sorry, you no longer have a choice. It's out of your hands now, because sometimes people we trust break that trust. Maybe the person you sent the picture to shows it to some friends. Maybe they send it to a couple friends, who send it to a couple more friends, you get the idea. It spreads, and you never know who might see it.
Okay, so I'm going to end it there. So it goes on to where pretty much her brother, her mom, some random person online, everybody at school, it circulated. You kind of start seeing, some of the consequences that occur, such as humiliation, bullying that can happen. When we're talking about the consequences of sexting with our kids, it's really important that we talk about the consequences that resonate with them. Research through an organization called Thorn says that when they surveyed teens and youth about their attitudes around sharing self-generated content, they say that the motivator to stop them from sexting was the fear of their images being spread or shared online. The motivator that and tactic around consequences that was least likely to motivate them to share images was the idea that they could get in trouble with the law. That really wasn't a motivator for them. So when we're talking about these consequences with our kids, we want to find out, and talk to them about what concerns you about this behavior when you're seeing it happen. What stops you from sharing these types of images out? So we want to have these conversations early. So when we're talking with our younger kids about it, we're talking about their bodies and boundaries and empathy and consent, right? And even before it has anything to do with sex, right? And then as kids get older into middle school and high school, having those conversations around boundaries and consent when it comes to dating relationships as well. So we want to talk about what those healthy relationships look like. We want to talk about the resharing aspect, and we want to talk about reporting options. We also want to talk about, okay, what if this happens? Then what can we do? What are some steps that can be taken to help stop something from happening, stop images from spreading? So there is a discussion guide that goes along with that photo video that I encourage you to download that goes over some of the choices and the consequences in healthy relationships, but also getting familiar with reporting options such as the cyber tip line. And we also have some get help resources that are available if images end up on the internet, that you can find on our website under our Get Help tab, to learn how to get content removed from popular social media sites. And we have a new resource called Take It Down, where the hash value of an image can be submitted. The hash value is like the digital fingerprint of a photograph or a video, and it goes on to a database that is shared out with participating internet service providers who will flag those images for removal from the internet. It's a brand new resource that just came out this year that can be helpful if content ends up out on the internet. We talked quite a bit about what sextortion is, and video is going to give you kind of an example of what that looks like. Okay, and this, of course, is an example of a financial sextortion situation, which often happens pretty quickly, and it can be when it does happen, it could be pretty harsh when they're making these threats to our children. So it's really important not to comply with any of these demands that are being made, to report it to the app or the game wherever it's happening, report it to the cyber tip line. And you can visit our Get Help Now area of our website as well for additional resources. Okay, last but not least, and I'm going to go through this very, very quickly because we're very dangerously close to time. But in terms of cyberbullying, we all know what that is. It's bullying through technology. We know that online cyberbullying can be even more damaging than in person sometimes because it's very difficult to get away from. And it can cause a lot of different negative effects for children as a result of it. So we want to make sure that we're looking for signs in our kids if they don't want to go to school, if they don't want to use their devices, if they're getting nervous when they get messages. It's time for us to kind of do that check-in with our kids to see, is there something going on? Um, and there's typically multiple facets to cyberbullying. You have the bully, you have the victim, you have the bystander. The bystander is somebody who sees something but may or may not do anything about it. But we really want to encourage our kids to be upstanders as well. So again, if you see something happening, we want to make sure that we are setting expectations with their kids around their online behaviors, making sure that they're posting, encouraging them to post in a positive way when they're interacting with others, and to speak up and to report if something were to happen. So again, talking to them to be that upstander if something happens, discourage friends from bullying others, don't participate, bring it to the attention of a trusted adult if something is happening. A lot of times we're asked about tech options, such as filtering programs and so, monitoring software that might be out there. And there's a lot of different options out there. We don't recommend any one kind of tech option because every family's needs are different. Your budgets are different. So we encourage you to research what will work best for all of you in your households if you're looking for those tech options. But remembering that building these relationships with their kids, having these conversations, giving them accurate information and strategies and problem solving skills is going to help protect them more than anything else. It's totally fine to couple that with tech options as well, but we want to make sure that our conversations and our relationship building is at the forefront. So I mentioned NetSmarts throughout the presentation. Again, this is where you can access all those great resources to get those conversations started. I mentioned our family advocacy team who's available to support families if their child is missing or exploited. So I encourage you to reach out to us. You can call us at our national hotline, 1-800-THE-LOST, or email gethelp@nicmic.org. And at this time, I'm going to stop sharing. And I know we're out of time, but if we do have the ability to answer a couple of questions, I'm happy to stay on for anybody who's able to.
There's one question in the chat, just, this is valuable material and probably should review it annually, and I'll talk to Danielle, but I mean, since Deborah, you do all the work, and I see Stephanie just joined us, had a little time issue there. She's from the Bavona Advocacy Center, that working with you in the community, I know this is a part of what you do in terms of parent education, community education. We'll certainly want to do that. There was a question in the chat, is this starting very young, like 8-year-olds with phones?
Yeah, we are seeing reports through our cyber tip line of very young kids. When we get reports of child sexual abuse imagery, we get reports of all different age groups, but we are seeing that younger kids in that age group are coming up more and more in reports. And Thorn, the organization that I referenced earlier, they have done some surveys to learn about the attitudes of children and teens around self-generated content. They are seeing a rise in from teens in the 9 through 12 age group, where kids are sharing out their own pictures as well. So that number is a little bit on the uptick, and they particularly saw that during COVID when we were all online and home. So yeah, this is something that we should be talking to our kids about in elementary school, and it could be as simple as, have you ever received an image or a message from somebody that made you feel uncomfortable? And if you do, let's talk about how we can handle it together, right? So we need to start having those conversations. We don't have to, with our 8-year-olds, use the term sextortion and all that, but you're going to notice too, with our Into the Cloud series videos, in season 2, it takes a situation that when you watch the situation, it's clearly a sextortion situation. The term is not used in the video, but an embarrassing photo is shared of one of the characters, and they are being blackmailed for in-game currency if they, you know, the image would be shared if they don't give in-game currency to this offender. And so that's a sextortion situation, and walking through, okay, how can I report it? How can I reach out to my trusted adult? I'm nervous about it. And so that's an age appropriate resource to be able to start having those conversations with your younger kids.
I don't see any other questions right now. I'm gonna post the video for PTSA, Danielle. I'll post it for our e-news and for people who didn't see it, and we'll put the description just like we had if you missed it. And I know Danielle at the middle school, they do the same, but either through health classes, our work with Bavona, who presents, that are now presenting to our kids annually, and through our own DASA presentations that we do in the school, we cover this information as well. And
Great.
certainly have done a lot with sexting and online digital footprints and what can happen to you, and sharing news clips of things from NetSmarts that we've used. So kids are
Great.
certainly getting a lot from the school, but hopefully as a community, we can all continue to combat these issues. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you very much for being here today, and thanks for everybody for giving up your hour. And again, Danielle and I will have the video posted probably sometime next week. Have a good
That's
afternoon,
great.
everybody.
Thank you all.